Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Sounds Podcast and Sounds of Film radio show. I'm Tom Needham, and today we are thrilled to welcome legendary film composer Mark Mancina. A trailblazer in the world of film music, Mark has scored some of Hollywood's most iconic movies, including Speed, Twister, Tarzan, Training Day, and Moana. With a career spanning decades, Mark's innovative soundtracks have earned him multiple Grammy Awards, a Tony nomination, and a prominent place among the most respected composers in the industry. Mark joins us today to talk about his incredible journey, including his latest work on Moana 2, the smash sequel to Disney's animated classic. From weaving Polynesian culture into the music to creating timeless melodies, Mark's collaboration on this project promises to delight audiences around the world. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today on Sounds.
Oh, my pleasure, Tom.
Oh man, what a career! I definitely want to get to Moana 2, but just for our listeners, let's talk a little bit about the incredible journey that you've been on. How did you first get interested in doing film music?
Well, I think my background growing up, some musicians that I've met and songwriters have told me that they think that your most influential years are, maybe from the time you're 8 years old till you're 15 years old. Those years, the type of music that you hear can be extremely influential in the rest of your life, and it certainly was in my life. Because the Beatles were finishing, and this new type of thing was happening where some groups were kind of continuing on that path uh, and doing and extending it, and those groups were like King Crimson and Cream, the Moody Blues, and then that became sort of the bands like Yes
Hmm.
and Genesis and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and they were taking musical forms further than in a different direction than the Beatles had done, but really kind of an extension of what the Beatles were doing. And I was into that music, so that music had a lot of instrumental passages in it, and I learned those pieces, and it seemed kind of like film music to me. It kind of started me on that journey, because I was really a songwriter principally, and that's what I did for a really long time. So by the time I started kind of getting into film music, the idea of it, I already had this library of instrumental music I had learned, and it kind of gave me a nice background.
Wow, that's really fascinating. So it was that love of those rock groups that you mentioned and learning that music and learning those melodies that kind of gave you what you needed to do the film music.
Of
What?
course, I didn't the synchronizing to the film. That was something I wasn't doing. But I
Yeah.
was doing everything else. And when it came time to do something, I actually used to drive around with my equipment and go to stores, retail stores, and tell them I could write them a theme, you know, uh, and then I would go into the store, set my gear up, write a theme, and then if they liked it, I'd say, "Well, you have to pay me for it." And they would say, "We're not going to pay you for it." And then I would leave and I'd go to the next store.
That's
But I
really
actually,
interesting. I've
yeah,
never
and
heard
I'm
anyone
very
say that they've done anything like that before.
no, I when I look back and think about doing that, it's kind of hilarious that I actually had the balls to do that. But I just was so yeah, I just wanted to do it, I guess. And one of the companies I went to was a video transfer company where they transferred videos, but they were making some hunting videos, how to gut a deer, and they asked me if I could write music. They had put music in it, like Elton John and pop songs and this and that. They asked me if I could write instrumental music like that, and I said sure. So when I took it home, I realized I needed to sync the music to the video, and there was no syncing in those days. There wasn't really a way to sync the two. You would just have to start at the same point and then always play it from there every time you overdub something. So it took a long time, but it turned out really quite well. And that was really my first, you know, writing music to picture.
Wow. Now, I understand really early in your career you worked with Hans Zimmer for a while. Is that true?
Yeah, eventually those demos, and then a demo I did, I actually wrote a piece for Emerson, Lake and Palmer, which was a band, a really big band in the
Yeah,
70s.
yeah.
This was in the late 80s. I wrote a piece for them, and it had a big instrumental section, and I was mixing it with an engineer who worked with Hans and said, I'm going to play this for Hans. And I didn't even know who Hans was, so I didn't care. And the next day, Hans called me and said, you must come to my studio, and uh, I was like, well, where is it? Santa Monica. Okay, so I went over there and I set up my little setup out of my trunk, and we started working. And it was pretty much hit the ground running. I mean, it was good that I had all that knowledge, that I knew how to do stuff ahead of time, because he was just expecting me to just start going. And we started working on different movies, and I started helping him.
That's incredible. So, your career has had um, so many different parts to it, and you've done so many different styles of music, and often film composers can get sort of stereotyped where they're known for doing certain types of music. But you've
Yeah.
had the ability to like go to all different kinds of genres. In the beginning, though, there were a lot of films like Speed, and tell me some of the early films that you worked on, and what kind of music you were doing in the beginning.
Well, the first one I did was a movie called Where Sleeping Dogs Lie.
Hmm.
And then I did True Romance somewhere in there with Hans. And then I did a movie called Monkey Trouble, which was a comedy, like a family film. And in that, the director had heard some cues from True Romance and had talked to Hans about me. And Hans said, "Yeah, Mark can do it. Mark can do your movie," because Jan de Bont, the director, had a very small budget, a small movie, but Fox was very excited about it, and that was Speed. So if you listen to the score to Speed, one of the interesting things on that score is that I used Alan Holdsworth, the great progressive guitarist,
Mm.
who many people, including Eddie Van Halen, consider the best guitarist who'd ever lived. Um, and it was my progressive roots. There they are. And the same with the score. There's some very progressive melodies in it, progressive rock. But the thing about that score was that it launched me. And so, as you said, now I'm an action composer, and that's what I do. I only do action, And I was getting hired to do Bad Boys, Money Train, anything where a train blows up, they're going to call Mark. Um, and I didn't really want to do that. And I liked doing it, but I just didn't want to be that guy that only does that. So I really battled against it as best I could. It was very hard because I was out of work a lot. But I just didn't want to do the next Independence Day, and I just wasn't interested.
So, what was your
And
strategy then? You would just hold off until you could get a film that allowed you to do something more creatively what you were interested in?
well, I was lucky because I had worked on The Lion King, so I'd done the songs on the original Lion King, and that, of course, went through the roof. So I had this relationship with Disney, which wasn't an action type of a relationship.
Mm.
So when they came to me with Tarzan, that really, that really gave me, okay, now I can work on songs, which is really my background, and then work on the score, and it's not really an action score. And so that really helped. And then right after that, Julie Taymor, the director, asked me to put together a musical version of The Lion King, and that took me out of the film world for a couple of years. But now I'm working on a musical theater piece. I'm writing songs, I'm writing lyrics, I'm writing the orchestration, I'm writing the music. I'm working with conductor, I'm working with live singers, whole different world. And I'm working in New York, So I was out of the LA film thing. So, these things just kind of tugged and pulled me around, and you know, I think more about my career now than I did then. Then I was just so enthusiastic. I just went for everything. You know what I mean? It was like, yes, yes, yes. And The Lion King really changed my life because it taught me a lot, and it also gave me the freedom financially to stand back and say, no, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I want to do this. Moana, John Lasseter, yes, that's a big yes. I'll put that. I'll see what that is. So.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Disney because I mean, I had a whole section of questions I wanted to ask you about Disney. You're one of the handful of people when you think of Disney music, and I am a huge fan. I've been playing your music for years here on the Sounds of Film. Um, so many associations with Disney films through the years. Um, let's even just kind of go over a couple that you mentioned. You mentioned that you worked on first Lion King, and then you did the Broadway production. What did you do on the original film soundtrack?
So that movie, so you have to picture Hans was in a studio. It was very makeshift. It was a studio that was used for making cassette copies and tape copies. But he had set his gear up in a room, and then I was set up in kind of the live room. And so things were going on. I was doing commercials, or Hans was working on something else. And there was all of this commotion and all this stuff going on. And he was doing a film called The King of the Jungle. And it was kind of the dog that Disney was working on. It was the film that nobody wanted to work on. It was a film that didn't make any sense. There wasn't much of a story. It was supposed to be African, but they hired Elton John to write the song. So it was kind of a mess. And Hans had asked me to basically put the songs together. Can you take Hakuna Matata, which was this song and dance demo, can you turn it into somehow being an African thing? Can you take I Just Can't Wait to Be King, which is a country song, and turn it into an African feeling thing? Can
Wow.
you take Feel the Love Tonight, which doesn't even fit in the movie? There isn't a love story in the movie, but can you fit it in there somewhere? So that was my job. And because of that, Chris Montan, who was the head of music for animation, we started to get to know each other. And as we worked together, we had a good relationship. And he realized that I knew what I was doing, and that it was okay that Hans wasn't in the room and all those kind of things. And we started a relationship that we did many films together. And I think that one of the things that turned him around was that when I did Hakuna Matata, kind of came up with the concept, and it really worked with the backdrop that I gave it. And then there was a section where there was nothing, and then the song just ended, and then it came back in. And this is the section where Simba is walking across the log,
Yeah, yeah.
and he walks across the log, he grows up. And Chris said, hey, by the way, that's a really important scene right there. I said, well, nothing happens. He goes, well, it will. I mean, eventually they're going to show animation-wise that Simba grows up, and the music needs to really kind of do something joyful. And I said, yeah, but there isn't anything there. He goes, yeah, well, I think you need to write something there, and you need to bridge the song there. So it's one of those things that's only, I don't know what 24 seconds long or whatever it is, but very important. I mean, this is where
Yeah.
Simba grows. So I came up with that da 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 with the choir,
Oh,
and it's
man.
such a joyful, fun thing. And I put it in there, and when Chris came back, he just looked at me and smiled and went, "Oh man," he goes, "That's it." And I think from there he realized, well, not only can this guy put this stuff together, but he can write. And I was hired then, not too long after that, to do the musical version of it, and then to do Tarzan. And those were two really big projects.
What I really love that you're talking about right now, which a lot of people don't do, is you're associated with these projects where there's these big name people like Elton John, and on Tarzan, you have Phil Collins, and people just know the names that they did the music, but you're working with them and you're working on the score, but you're also working on some of their music. Can you explain like you just did a little bit. Like what's it like? Like give me a story from like Tarzan, for example, to work with Phil Collins, but also be contributing your own music.
Yeah. It's very, very exciting and rewarding, but you have to understand that going into it, Phil Collins is the star. Lin-Miranda is the star.
Hmm.
So even though we work together like a band, we call each other, we work on stuff, we laugh, we try things. I play something and Phil goes, "You're a genius. I love this." There's all these great moments and wonderful closeness and a feeling of really working together like you're in a band or like you're two songwriters working on something. And that's what I grew up in, and that's where I'm comfortable, and I love it, and it's done really well for me. But when I see them on television, or when I see, just on an interview with Lynn the other night, um, about Mufasa, and my name doesn't come up, and it's kind of part of the gig,
Hmm.
because I'm not the star. Lynn's the star. And people are more interested in hearing about Lynn and hearing about, say, Lebo, than they are about hearing about Mark Mancina, who they just kind of go, "Who's that? Oh, he's a film composer. Oh, okay. Well. Anyway, go on." You know what I mean? That's kind of how it is. So, you know, sometimes it's kind of a drag, but most of the time I'm fine with it, because as we're talking right now, I'm looking at the ocean from my house. I have guitars wrapped around me. I'm very happy. I'm very, very happy. I've been very fortunate in my career, and I get to do what I know how to do, which is make songs great and write music, and that's what I know how to do. I've done it since I was a kid, and thank goodness I'm able to be doing it for a living.
I only bring it up because you mentioned it. It's really no one's business, but you did mention that one of the benefits of working on these huge movies and on the play is that your music is part of this very very successful business venture, and the rewards in terms of financial success must be incredible. Being part of Moana, Lion King,
Yeah.
these are blockbuster, like $1 billion, you know, um, iconic films. Um, and then it allows you to do other stuff as well. It's interesting that like people know the certain songs, but when a soundtrack comes out, which is what I feature on my program, there might be like 4 songs or 5 songs that everybody knows, but then very often there's like 15 other tracks that are the film composer,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's often you. It's a lot of music by you, and
Well,
that's
for instance, the new Moana, there's not a piece of music I didn't touch, not one that I didn't either play on, help shape, record, mix, everything. Every single second. I did Opie
wow.
stuff. I did the girls' stuff. I did my stuff. So, yeah, it's a massive undertaking. It's really like Mark is in charge of the entire score, all of the music, everything you hear. Now, the girls are the songwriters, and they wrote the songs, and Opie wrote some great vocal stuff, but everything else you hear is me. So it's a lot of work, but it's also rewarding. And I've got a great guy I work with. His name is Marlon Espino, and he's a
Hmm.
great musician, engineer. He does everything, and it's just really a two-man operation for the most part. I mean, we have some people that help us here and there, but not much. We're a very small thing. We're not in Los Angeles, and it's very boutique. It's very hidden and really, really fun.
Yeah.
I'm very
Tell me a little bit about the first Moana soundtrack. Did you know from the beginning, like even before it was released, when you had a lot of the music done, that one was going to be special?
No. And I'll tell you something. Same with Lion King, the first Lion King. You have to picture me, and on the first Lion King, I was playing in a Mexican restaurant at night. I was working on the songs in the day. I was having a plumber fix my shower, and the plumber came out one day and said, "I don't know what that Hakuna Makiki thing is, but it's driving me crazy. You're playing it over and over again." And I said, "Well, I'm trying to figure this song out. I'm trying to make this song turn into something." He goes, "Well, right now I can't listen to it. It's driving me crazy." Well, that was kind of helpful. And to think that that song is pretty much in the lexicon of everybody that knows that movie is pretty unbelievable. When we worked on Moana, the first Moana, they put Opataya, Lin, and me down in New Zealand for a festival of Polynesian music. Now, it was a great move because it gave us a chance to hear really traditional Polynesian dance and music. But the other side of it was that you've got a guy from New York who's a songwriter. You've got me, which I have a much more, I would say, European background. And then you have Opataya, who's Polynesian. And you're going to put the three of us in a room and say, we don't have a story, but can you guys write something? Well, that's what they did. They put us in a bizarre studio. There were birds flying through it. I mean, it was in the middle of Australia, in New Zealand, and we just sort of played around. We didn't know what we were writing, and as we did the movie, it got better and better. I just felt like it was good. I just didn't know if people were going to really relate to it. And to be honest with you, it really wasn't until we started working on Moana 2 that I realized how big Moana 1 was. Oh. Because it seemed like a good movie, but it just didn't seem like it was that big of a deal. And then when we started doing interviews while we were doing Moana 2, and they were talking about, Germany and all these countries around the world that are so into it, and how big of an audience, and how they had showed a screener or an advertisement for Moana 2, and how the reaction was through the roof. It was all very surprising to us, to me and Opataya, for sure.
I imagine there was a lot of pressure because I know the fan base for Moana is very strong and very opinionated. And
Yeah.
How have you dealt with like staying true to what people expected from the first soundtrack, and tell us what the new one is like, and how you worked new music into this second feature.
Well, the pressure was twofold. The pressure was, as you said, the fans, what they're expecting, and hoping that we're not doing a cash in and doing some stupid sequel. Then the other pressure was Disney, because Disney has not had a good couple of years. They've had some of the biggest failed films that they've made ever. And so we're coming from that. So what I did was I said to myself, integrity always wins. And I have to make sure that this score is not good, but way better than the first one. And the way I can do that is, number one, I have an advantage, and my advantage is that I've already done the first one, so I already have like a toolbox that I kind of know what I'm going to use. Secondly, Moana is more grown up in this film. She was 16 in the first film. I think she's 22, 23 in this film. And I thought, well, why don't we grow the music up? Why don't we make the music a little bit more grown up? And even though we have our funny moments with Maui and the goofy hey, the chicken and all that kind of stuff, we have some really nice, sophisticated moments in the movie, especially towards the end. And I think it gave the movie a lot of depth. And the whole way, my whole goal was to beat the first score. Better themes, better orchestration, better everything. And I really feel that we did, by far.
I agree. I've been listening to it a lot, and we're featuring it on the Sounds of Film, and the box office is obviously saying that people are loving this film.
Yeah. Yes.
Going back to just the whole Disney thing, just one minute. I'm a big fan of going to the Disney theme parks as well, and I think one of the reasons why they're so special compared to other theme parks is because of the way that they incorporate at a very high level the music throughout the park.
Yeah.
And you've been a big part of that too. One of the things that I listened to of yours and have featured on the show, which I don't think it's being used right now at Animal Kingdom, but I was a big fan of, was River of Light. I was wondering if you could just tell me a little bit about the use of your music in Disney parks, whether it's connected to Lion King or Moana or something like River of Light.
Well, River of Light was kind of a separate project, with new themes. It wasn't really based on anything. And that started, what happened was they asked me if I could do it, and I think I said no, because I think I was pretty busy at the time. I don't remember, but what I do remember is I wrote a song, the We Are One song. I wrote that song and sent that to them and just said, listen, here's a song I wrote. I think this could work really well. Um, and then they loved it. So we started to work on that, and I think Don Harper, who I've worked with many times, I think he sort of took over the project at a certain point because I was being pulled into a movie. It might have been Moana. I don't remember what it was, but I was getting pulled into a movie and somebody needed to kind of finish it off. The other thing was Tarzan's Treehouse. I know they used
Yeah.
some of the score for Tarzan in that treehouse. And then I did something in Japan. I did some kind of flight simulator. I don't know if it's still there. And then Marlon, who works in my studio, he just did a Moana water show in Florida.
Wow.
So
I,
we have done quite a bit, in my studio. We have done quite a bit of that stuff.
I, they don't show it anymore, but I remember years ago going to a live Tarzan, like it was like a concert. Um,
Ah.
did was your music incorporated into that as well?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I just it's a funny thing with the theme parks. My brother, I mean, you might know my brother. My brother goes to Disneyland. He's like one of these guys that goes to the theme parks to get, like, if they issue new badges or they issue new buttons or whatever. He's been doing that since we were little kids, and he's still doing it. Um, so some of the Disney park stuff I take a little liking to because I just want to do it because I know my brother's gonna check it out.
That's
Um,
cool. That's cool. Well,
yeah.
I want to congratulate you on Moana 2, and I wish we had more time because you've done like 60 plus film scores through the years. I mean, just when you look back at your whole career, any part of it, because we said earlier you've done so many different styles of music. Um, any one part of it that maybe people don't talk about as much that you're particularly proud of?
Well, I think August Rush was something that I was very proud of. It was a film that I did.
Yeah.
It didn't do that great, but now has a big following, and a lot of people ask me about that. And then the other thing I would say is that right now it's kind of an amazing time because I mean yesterday actually, Juror Number Two is #1 on iTunes download. It just came out yesterday, and I did
Hmm.
that score, and I did, of course, Moana, and then Mufasa's soundtrack is coming out in a week or two, and I did that, the songs. And so to have these three different films out with my hands all over them in different ways is really an exceptional time for me. It's really, really fun for us. It's fun for our family. It's the holidays and we're all together. I'm done working for a little bit. I have a break and we can be together. And it's just a very special time. I feel very, very blessed. I feel very, very fortunate because this business is brutal, as you know.
You are the man. I mean, of the moment. Can you just give us a little taste of, a little sense of what to expect from Mufasa?
Well, I can tell you this, it was the first time I've gone back to doing a Lion King songs the same way I did them back in '92, which was strip off everything, keep the vocal, and rewrite the track and make it sound like Lion King. And at first it was so daunting because Lin is great. We have a great relationship. His songs were really good, but I wanted him to sound just like Lion King, like boom, right into Lion King, not even like, oh, this is kind of not really, it's kind of Lion King. I didn't want to sound like that. And I think we achieved it. I love the songs. I think they're really catchy, really fun. I'm not a big fan of the live CGI animal thing,
Hmm.
but that's just me. I love what Lin wrote. I had nothing to do with the score, so that's all separate. The Zimmer stuff and everything, that's all separate. But I did do the songs, and I feel very, very good about that soundtrack. I think people are going to really like it.
Oh man, we're gonna have to talk again, Mark. I want to wish you a happy holiday season. I'm glad with your family. and so much music for our listeners to check out. We're going to be featuring a ton of it here on the program. Mark, it's been a great pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. It was a lot of fun.
Take it easy. Bye bye.
And bye bye.